Welcome to the Bigger Cashflow podcast, where we interview business owners and real estate investors that share tips and tricks on how to grow your cash flow and reach financial freedom.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to another exciting episode of the Bigger Cashflow podcast. Today we have Nick on the show. Nick is a 29-year-old graduate of USC and is currently an e-commerce channel manager for a large tech company. Nick, his wife, and their two dogs recently relocated to the San Jose area, and despite their demanding W-2 jobs, they have amassed a portfolio of 45 doors in less than 3 years. Nick has used a variety of strategies, including turnkey, BRRRR, and creative financing to grow their portfolio at a pretty incredible rate. His current goals are to stabilize his existing investments, establish a flipping business, expand to additional markets, and achieve financial independence in the next 2 to 3 years. While Nick takes quite a bit of pride from his work, his most rewarding experiences are helping other investors get started in their secondary careers. He views investing as a vehicle to free his time to give back to his friends, family, and to the wider world. Well, with that said, let's welcome Nick to the show. How you doing,
bro.
Nick?
Hey, really excited to be on here.
Yeah, I'm very excited. You know, you and I, we've been kind of talking back and forth on, Facebook, and I've seen how you're growing in the mutual groups that we're a part of in the investment world. And it's very exciting because I'm also investing heavily in Indianapolis, and it looks like you have had tremendous success in growing your portfolio to over 45 doors. So why don't we just dive right in, and if you can tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you indicated there, I am absolutely a W-2 employee at the moment and really have no intention of quitting that anytime soon. Really got started a couple years ago when I discovered a variety of different podcasts. Started with one that was a turnkey provider in Indianapolis. He's no longer doing that, which then branched me over into Bigger Pockets and a variety of other podcasts, and really latched on to that house hacking idea. Did that in Southern California with my wife and a mother-in-law suite. It was really cool. Ended up moving up here to San Jose though, and now that's what really our first 2 doors that we've got. And since then, actually invested, like you were indicating, in a turnkey, and then several other deals within the Indianapolis market using a ton of different strategies, ton of different financing, and really just whatever was in front of me and was going to give me a return that wasn't going to sap money from my pocket. I was really on board to try.
Nice. So in terms of your first aha moment, in terms of, hey, real estate is the right vehicle for me to create the goals that I want in terms of financial freedom, was there like a particular moment that you can retrace your steps back to?
Yeah, actually I can. My wife and I, like I had indicated, we had just moved in actually into that house hack. And I was, doing very, very well in my W-2, and getting that passive income on a monthly basis for that mother-in-law suite. When I kind of out of the blue, I had my job publicly threatened a couple of times from a pretty terrible boss, and it was in that moment when I was struggling to sleep at night because I had a mortgage, I had responsibilities, I've got my 2 dogs, and obviously those are incredibly important to me. Have to support those guys, and I realized that nobody could really take that rental income away from me, but my W-2 was absolutely at risk, and it really didn't matter how hard I tried or how effective I was at my work if you've got a bad manager. And that's when I dove in. And like I was indicating, couldn't sleep at night because I was so excited. My brain was turning with what the next opportunity was going to be in real estate and how I could essentially define my own future. And that's how I view real estate, is essentially a way for me to define my path, to define where I'm going. And if my W-2 continues to fit into that, fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah.
And in terms of the house hacking, was that from, reading from Bigger Pockets and other articles, or was that just something, hey, we have an extra room available or a suite, let's just rent it out? How did that happen?
Yeah, that was listening to the famous Brandon Turner, Beardy Brandon. Listened to him intently when he talked about that, and trying to find ways to offset the cost of living. I think it was probably about that same time I was also listening to Scott Trench's Set for Life. If any of you guys have read that book, it's
That's a
fantastic.
great book.
Yeah, that's probably my single most gifted book. As if people ask me kind of what I'm doing, and so was reading all of that stuff, and realized I needed to offset as much of the cost of housing as humanly possible. And I know you're familiar there with the Southern California market. It's definitely on the expensive side from a housing perspective. And yeah, so that's really why we went down that path. This wasn't just like some extra room that we were renting out. I had a wife that probably wasn't going to be on board for that. So really, I was looking for something when we were purchasing our home, for something that had a separate entrance, really no shared spaces, that would kind of give the semblance of a single family home without actually having to pay that on a monthly basis. And my wife was extremely accommodating, despite the fact that we were getting married and then bought a house immediately after. She was absolutely incredible at helping to facilitate that.
I love that. And I'm smiling here because my wife would not be down for that as well. So I would have had to intentionally find a house that would allow for that. Luckily, the first time we did like a quote unquote room hack, it was for a family member. So that was okay. But I've been looking because our market is so darn expensive. You went from an expensive market to an even more expensive market, in my eyes, San Jose, right?
Yeah, definitely didn't get any cheaper.
Yeah. So what did you do with the one in SoCal? Did you keep that one?
Yeah. We actually held on to it mostly because hey, moving to San Jose is particularly expensive, and we didn't want to deal with all the hassle of moving all of our own stuff and then selling a house simultaneously. So yeah, we actually held on to it. We've now rented out both the part that we lived in, and then the upstairs is still rented. And we actually hired a property manager to take care of it for us, so that we wouldn't have to think about it. It covers its own expenses. It's in Southern California. It's appreciated really well for us because we invested quite a bit into it as well. And yeah, so we're just kind of using that. And honestly, we put a HELOC on it as well before we moved out, so that we're able to essentially use it as a giant piggy bank to fund several of our other investing deals.
Nick, I'm sure if you and I were to compare notes, we would have a lot more in common, because I'm just smiling here. As you said, now you have a HELOC on this thing. And that's one of my favorite strategies to use, and just reuse that capital to create more cash flow. And we'll probably get to a little bit more of that when we get into how you scaled up and creative financing. But so you moved to the San Jose area, and before that, I'm assuming that you started to look out of state. How did that happen for you, especially Indianapolis of all places?
Yeah, I truthfully stumbled on Indianapolis. It wasn't intentional. Like I was indicating, I was listening to some podcasts that the host was an investor in Indianapolis and several other markets. And so my brain, the seed was planted there, and I've got some family out there as well. So when it was time to start investing out of market, because I'd done my analyses, I knew Indianapolis was a good market. It was kind of an easy choice, and that's when I actually purchased my first turnkey out there. It wasn't necessarily the best deal in the world, but I wanted somebody to give me the introduction. I wanted somebody to teach me what the process was like, and I was willing to pay essentially above retail for what an investor would count, to have somebody essentially handhold me through the process, give me the introductions to the right people, and kind of get my foot in the door, so that then I could do it myself afterward.
I love that. And I just want to re-emphasize that for our listeners here. When people email me or DM me on Instagram and ask me, hey, Bo, what's the best way to get started? I've been to like a boot camp and they're saying, hey, $20,000 to get this course or whatever. If you were to ask me, should I pay, X amount for this program versus, buying a turnkey property? I personally, depending on your goals, right? Multifamily might be a different game. But for me, paying to learn how to fix and flip homes and all of that why don't you just pay to buy a turnkey property or buy a property off the MLS and kind of learn? And all the while doing that, just grow your network, talk to other investors to make sure that you hedge your risk, and obviously don't make a big mistake where you can't recover from. I'm not telling you to take all your life savings and buy a property in a neighborhood that you don't know anything about. But I'm saying taking steps by actually putting your money in these investments rather than just paying for education or coaches, because I've seen a lot of people do that and never really take action. But once you really, put your money in this property and you have a turnkey, I think turnkey serves a good purpose in getting your feet wet, getting to know the market, and understanding how to own a property. So what are your thoughts on that, Nick?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that a lot of people view education as taking action, and I don't agree with that at all. I think you learn more from actually going out there and doing it on a daily basis. I've done I don't even know the number of deals at this point, but up to 45 doors, and on every single closing I learned something new. Every single interaction with a client, with a contractor, with one of my tenants, I learned something new. And these aren't the kind of things that you're going to learn in a boot camp. So actually getting in there, getting your hands dirty, spending a little money, absolutely, but spending it towards actually investing versus coaching, I think is a significantly better ROI on your money.
I love that. And are you just in Indianapolis right now or other markets?
So at the moment, I am only in Indianapolis, and then that Southern California home. That is kind of unintentional. Like what I've been looking to do is actually diversify, but every time I've been saving up my money for my next investments in a new market, my reputation gets ahead of me a little bit, and an opportunity falls in my lap, and I end up just tackling that in Indianapolis. So maybe I need to have a little bit more of a backbone and just say no. But it's really hard when some of these opportunities keep coming my way. So I am looking to diversify. I think Indianapolis is a fantastic market. I do want to actually acquire more houses there, but I do think for my own ability to sleep at night, getting into some other cash flow markets makes sense.
I love that. And I'd like to just ask you on what you just said there, is that opportunities are coming to me. And I get a lot of questions asking me, hey, Bo, like, how do you find these deals? It seems like it's oversaturated. There's too much competition. I can't find anything. So, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about how you, source leads and find deals, and how deals even find you?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple ways that you can really do this. There's obviously the wholesaler route. You and I are on probably all the same, if not mostly the same lists at this point, and those can be good opportunities to find deals for flips, burrs, things along those lines. On top of that, I actually generally make at least an offer every single day. Now, the majority of these offers are on the MLS, and the majority of them are absolutely just going to get shut down, and that's okay. What I'll do is I'll go look at my farmed areas, and I will make an offer on every house that's on the market that it makes sense for me. And I have the expectation that the majority are going to say no. And I've actually gotten myself into a little bit of trouble in the past with cash crunches when I've actually gotten too many yeses. But that's a happy problem, because that means that I found too many deals to do, and I've actually handed those off in the past. So that's essentially how I find the deals. How the deals find me is actually a little different. I have in the last less than a year purchased 4 different portfolios of properties, and those aren't generally found on the MLS. So the first one was a pocket listing that my agent actually brought me. This is before we had much of a relationship. And since then, ever since we closed that one, actually the seller's agent and other agents within her office have come to me with these little pocket portfolio listings, because they know that I'll think creatively, I'll figure out what the actual problem is, and I'll solve it for the sellers. And so, like I said, I was trying to get out, but they keep dragging me back in. when I closed on my most recent acquisition in early June. That was my biggest one to date. So yeah, it's a lot of just building a reputation, and you're absolutely right, Bo. It is oversaturated. I think you and I probably talked to a variety of different investors that are looking to get started. And if you're just kind of scouring the MLS looking for a deal, if you're reaching out to agents looking for a deal, you're probably not going to find one. That's just not the way it's done in today's market.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's very relationship based. And like you said, I love what you said about, hey, once I closed on this deal, they started coming to me. And I think that's so important for investors to note that every person that you talk to, you leave some sort of impression with them, and reputation is pretty important in a small investor community, especially, we're part of an investor Indianapolis group. And you and I, like you mentioned, we probably talk to the same wholesalers, brokers, and property managers. And there are already people who are, talked around saying, okay, this person, just only makes lowball offers, or this person doesn't ever close on any deals, or, things like that. Like they back out a lot. And I think the ability to close when you say you're going to close, and, getting back to them when you say you're going to get back to them, all those little things, I think, make a good impression on these people who bring you the deals and want to do deals with you. Because same reason, like Nick, for me, I buy off of the MLS, and I sometimes lowball offers as well because they need to work for my price and my portfolio. But other times when wholesalers bring me deal, I don't necessarily try to discount all the time, and I'll just pay full price if I know they're already bringing me a good deal. And it's funny how that works, because sometimes, the wholesalers, 9 out of 10, I don't like them. And then they have one good one that I like, and I email them literally 30 minutes later and it's gone. So there are other people who are eyeing that same list and they know it's a good deal. So I feel like you have to continue to underwrite to understand the market and make offers if you want to close on any.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you absolutely nailed it. It's incredibly competitive, like you were saying, but absolutely be cognizant of your reputation. And if you say you're going to do something, absolutely do it. Otherwise, you're not going to get any special treatment.
Yeah, for sure. And so you started with the turnkey route, and you've kind of segued into creative financing along with the BRRRR strategy. For those newer listeners who aren't familiar with the term, let me see if I can get this right. It's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat.
I nailed it.
Yeah.
Let's try.
Yeah. There's lots of R's in there. But basically, what it's allowing you to do is buy a distressed property at like 40, 50 cents on the dollar, put in a little bit of work, and then you take it to the bank because you own it free and clear, whether you got hard money loans on it or, private funds on it, and say, hey, bank, would you like to give me a mortgage? And they're like, yes, we'd like to make lots of interest on your property. And once you do that, you get that cash and you pay all your pre-existing debts. And if you did it right, then you'll be left with a property with some equity and some cash flow. So it looks like
what I do want to point out there is actually, I think you're using the advanced strategy of owning it outright on the front end, either with hard money or by buying it outright. And what that allows you to do is avoid the 6 month or a year seasoning period. I think that's actually a brilliant way of approaching it. So I just wanted to point that out to the to your listeners here, that you're actually kind of taking it to the next level on that BRRRR.
Yeah, and I try to find different ways, because one of the things that's not really spoken of, and this is probably maybe investing 102, is the velocity of money. And a lot of people talk about, the equity that you're getting as well as the cash flow, which is awesome. But if you really multiply that through velocity of money, whether it be your savings or other people's money or HELOCs or whatever, and you recycle it. So let's just say you're able to do 1 deal a year, but you times that by doing 4 deals a year, then you're recycling that same capital much, much quicker, and you're on your way to financial freedom that much quicker. So I think that's some, thing that's sometimes overlooked, but I think that's really important for me. So whenever I set my terms, negotiating with the seller for seller financing or with the banks in terms of interest rates and points, I look at it in terms of, okay, if they're going to charge me a little bit more on the underwriting or to closing costs and whatnot, but they're allowing me to maybe package up 7 properties with no seasoning, then I'm going to take that deal because I'm going to be able to recycle my capital that much quicker. But kind of got off on a tangent because you talked about the advanced BRRRR strategy. But is there any little tips and tricks that you like to use on that front?
Yeah, a variety of different ones. Like you were saying, kind of the advanced tip of owning it outright is absolutely key. That way, you don't have to wait the 6 months to a year to refinance it, and you can accelerate the amount of cash that you have in that deal. Now, it does tie up probably more of your capital to own it outright, generally speaking, unless you're using hard money. But that's absolutely a fantastic one. Using a HELOC to pull that off is something I've done in the past. Is essentially buying a property, quote unquote cash, with the HELOC, and then very quickly, actually, generally speaking, I actually start the refinance process the day after I close, and that way, you can kind of speed the process up. So that's been pretty darn cool. Making sure to partner with your contractor before you close, so that they're on closing day. They're in there doing the work as soon as humanly possible. But then also understanding in your BRRRR that you don't need to get every dollar back out potentially. This is investing. And I know that this is something you and I have kind of have chatted about in the past, but understanding that to be successful, you don't necessarily need to have no money in a BRRRR. You need to essentially build equity, build cash flow, kind of depending on specifically what your goals are for that specific deal. Don't necessarily hamstring yourself by not allowing yourself to actually invest money in the deal.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit in terms of, because I agree with you. I'm not on the boat of refi till you die, because you certainly can continue to refi and take all your equity out. But, it is a sliding scale in terms of the more money you take out, the bigger the mortgage. You're going to potentially cut your cash flow very thinly. So let's talk about that a little bit. Why do you think it's okay in terms of leaving your money a little bit into it? And is there a specific strategy in the overall picture?
Yeah, and that's an incredibly complicated question. That's why I'm hesitating here. I think really you have to evaluate for yourself what your goals are. For me at this point in my investing career, I'm really happy with my job. I'm working for a fantastic boss now, and I'm not looking to quit anywhere in the near future. So for me, maximizing my total return is what I'm going for. So I want to essentially have as many dollars under management as humanly possible, so that I can pay down and build my equity on a monthly basis. Cash flow is important, but it's not my most important metric when I'm evaluating I'm evaluating my deals in today's market. As long as I'm not losing money, I'm essentially happy with those deals. Now, if you're an investor that's looking to potentially get out of the workforce or really protect that cash flow at all costs, you're absolutely right. Leaving money in the deal actually makes it significantly more profitable on a monthly basis. So for me, I'm in the definitely on the higher leverage side at this point, but I'm looking to as I approach my financial independence, convert some of that debt and some of that equity into more cash flow.
I love that. And this is kind of spoken briefly in a couple real estate books that I like. And one of my favorites is Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Investor, where he basically breaks it up into 3 parts of, like think $1 million, grow $1 million, own $1 million, something like that. And it is the 3 phases I feel like investors all go through in terms of a person who, like myself and Nick, are in the growth stage might be a little bit more leveraged than somebody who is maybe older in their career looking to exit. They shouldn't be as highly leveraged, right? If their portfolio is like 75 to 80% leveraged and they're like, I don't know, 50 and they're looking to retire, that's not a good looking portfolio in case there's a dip or they're trying to exit, right? Because you're not going to have a lot in that portfolio. So a lot of people, what they do is use that cash flow over time, whether it be using the snowball method or selling off the kind of pruning the bad fruit, so to say. They'll deleverage that way. But I totally agree with you, Nick, that, there's multiple ways to get paid through real estate and cash flow isn't the only way. But I feel like for investors who are new to the game, they shouldn't be focusing on appreciation or equity in the beginning, is my thought.
I'd actually agree with that completely, because early on, when you only have 1, 2, 5 doors, one of them goes vacant. There's some issue. You're actually in a little bit of a troublesome situation there. I've got several doors, so if one of them goes vacant, honestly, I don't even feel it in my cash flow. But it's a different situation. If you've got to deal with a $2,000-$3,000 turn and you've only got 2 properties versus having essentially the insurance across multiple properties. So I think you're absolutely right. I think making sure as people are getting started, they understand the fundamentals of how to build an effective portfolio, focusing on cash flow, then they can put themselves in the best possible position to be successful.
Yeah, totally. If you're looking for insurance coverage for your rental properties, the company that I trust is Ross Diversified Insurance Services, a national insurance agency that has been providing insurance coverage for real estate investors for over 30 years. Whether it's a rental or a fix and flip, Ross provides you coverage through A-rated insurance carriers to provide you with competitive rates, as one size does not fit all. Check out biggercashflow.com/RDIS to get your free quote today. When you're purchasing your first property or the next, you want to work with an experienced lender who's got your best interest in mind. Sean Huss at Chemical Bank has been a professional in the mortgage industry for over 25 years and has helped hundreds of investors like you and me grow their rental portfolio. With expertise in areas such as real estate sales, title and escrow, and the mortgage closing process, Sean is able to provide comprehensive counsel to guide you throughout this often complicated process. Check out biggercashflow.com/chemicalbank to get pre-qualified for free when you mention the Bigger Cashflow podcast. And on this show, we had a couple investors who successfully used, turnkey or BRRRRs to scale their portfolio, but not a lot of people have had success with creative financing, maybe subject twos or seller finance properties. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about the different strategies that you've used from a creative financing perspective and maybe an example into a deal?
Absolutely. Yeah. So over the last year or so, I've done seller financing on a variety of deals. And that actually includes the one I was telling you about that I just closed on most recently in June, where a portfolio of 32 doors were actually brought to me from an agent. And the distress here wasn't the houses. The houses are in incredible shape. The distress was actually in the sellers. There was a health issue. They needed to leave the state essentially and go retire, essentially get out and stop self-managing. And so in that situation, I was going in to solve a problem. So they had significant equity in the homes, and I needed to essentially be able to close quickly and help them pay off about $500,000 worth of outstanding debt on approximately $2.25 million worth of property. So I actually brought in a partner who was willing to traditionally finance on several of the homes. So in that case, that actually looked to the seller like cash in the deal, about $500,000 to resolve their outstanding debt. That partner got some immediate equity on the buys. They're in a different stage of their investing. They were looking essentially for some steady cash flow, weren't looking for severe leverage. And I was actually able to negotiate a 20-year fixed rate mortgage with the sellers on 25 of those doors for 0% down on my part. And actually, I got a check at closing because of prorated rents, taxes, all that stuff. That then I was able to reinvest into the properties, make sure that everything was kosher, bring it under my management. And now on that deal, I'm cash flowing relatively neutral on that deal. But on a monthly basis, I have a loan pay down in the $5,000, $6,000, and that's only going to grow over time, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 range on a monthly basis. That's immediately adding equity into my pocket. So that's one of the creative strategies. They were looking for their nest egg, their retirement, and so I'm paying them $12,000 a month for the next 20 years. They're thrilled because I hate to say it, but I think that's probably going to be an asset that's passed on to their heirs in the next 10 years or so.
Awesome. So for those properties, were they already located in areas that you were investing in, or were couples maybe spread across different neighborhood classes? And also in terms of the due diligence, especially on those cases where you have to close fast, what did that look like? Did you have to check every door, or did you do a percentage?
Yeah, lots of good questions. It happened to be in an area that I had begun investing in the majority of the doors. There were onesie twosies that were kind of scattered around. Generally speaking, these were all in B plus areas, which is fantastic. That's kind of where I'm looking to be at this point. I'm not really looking at C class or lower at this point. And these were all in the Irvington area of Indianapolis. I'm sure you're relatively familiar. It's just absolutely incredible area. As to the due diligence, I definitely had every door checked out. I've got a contractor, an inspector that I really, really like. He's done incredible work for me. And I negotiated with him actually here. I was like, all right, they're all within like a mile of each other, and you're going to do them all over the course of a week. Like, what kind of per door rate can we get? He was able to really work with me there, because really helped to grow his business quite a bit. And I think that was like $16,000 of inspections over the course of a couple of days, including sewer scopes, which I highly recommend every single one of your listeners actually gets if they buy a house. Indianapolis tends to have some issues with those, so definitely get those checked out. They're generally aging systems. And so he was able to actually knock all of those out within a week or so. And we actually closed within a month or so of starting the negotiation.
Nice. So after those inspections, did you have any kind of leverage to go back to the seller and kind of negotiate on a price and terms, or?
I absolutely did. The starting price was definitely higher. We got a bunch of concessions at closing to help repairs. There were a couple of issues with a couple of tenants that needed to be evicted. And so that's actually what we're working on now. We got pricing concessions at close. They actually, looking at the closing statement, essentially the bare minimum that they could accept from a cash perspective. And now they're making it up on that monthly note.
Okay.
But yeah, so there was definitely a little bit of distress in a couple of the properties, and that's where I've been investing a lot of time, money, and attention in the last couple of months.
Nice. And as you're underwriting this, one of the questions that come to mind, because if you're underwriting, one unit versus a portfolio of 10, if you make mistake in terms of your assumptions, because they're the biggest variables, if you make a incorrect assumption on one of the properties, it doesn't hurt as much. Now multiply that by 10, then that might hurt a little bit more. So looking back it's only been a couple of months, but was there anything that you may have done differently in terms of doing your due diligence on the numbers, like taxes, insurance, any expenses, or maybe even checking the P&L and rent roll, things like that?
So I was pretty darn solid on my underwriting on this one. I think I was probably a little overly conservative, which is generally what you want to do. I have fantastic partners. I've got a property manager, an agent who are actually the same person in this situation. So there's a little bit of accountability there in that my agent isn't just inclined to close on as many properties with me as humanly possible, because then he actually has to go perform on them on the other side. So there's definitely a give and take there, and he's definitely had his share of sleepless nights since closing, helping to stabilize this bad boy. But no, actually, we've been really lucky. This has been a fantastic deal. I was going into it with my eyes wide open. I've got several other properties within that area. So I was going in assuming the worst, and I've definitely had some issues in that area. So I was going in assuming the worst, and we've got a variety of different insurance policies from the standard homeowners insurance actually over into the mechanicals that have really helped to smooth out some of the cash flow on the properties, as there were definitely several issues within a month or so of closing. It always happens that way, though.
Yeah, it totally does. And just like Nick said, I feel like when you're buying these properties, especially in older neighborhoods, definitely get the sewer scope done, because if that thing collapses, you're just talking about a couple thousand easy that you may have not included in your underwriting. And what sewer scopes are like 125, 150. It's not that much. So it's definitely worth doing to save you a lot of headaches and a couple $1,000s down the road.
Yeah, I had one before I created that rule for myself that ended up costing me about $7,000. I have a buddy that just invested, I think, between 12 and 15,000 on one. Yeah, it's just not fun. Those aren't the fun investments. Those aren't the ones that actually go in there and add value to the home. That's just like the bare minimum. It has to have a functioning toilet.
Yeah. When Nick and I mentioned these things, ask us how we know. For me, it was, I didn't get an inspection on one of these homes and the roof was shot. And when I thought I was a pro, right? After doing a dozen of these homes, I actually visited the Kansas City market. I was looking at it, the roof looks good. And my broker, he has a lot of experience too. And he's like, yeah, roof looks good. And then next thing you know, 3 months later, it starts leaking and the roof, the non-visible part, right? That's where you got to go up there and walk it. The non-visible part, it was just, deteriorating. So we had to get a new roof on it, which was another 45 to 5,000 bucks that I could have totally negotiated. So, lesson learned there. It's very tempting as you do multiple of these homes to say, okay, maybe I'll save 300 bucks on not doing an inspection or another 150 on not doing a sewer scope, because those things all add up. And it's, you think it's money in your pocket right away, but it's like being, penny wise and pound foolish in those sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you can't afford a couple $100s for inspections, your deal's too thin. That or you don't have enough reserves. Something's wrong, and you should probably be taking a step back on that particular deal.
I love that. And another key takeaway that I was listening to Nick talk about this portfolio purchase is that, during your due diligence, you want to be overly conservative. And I probably mentioned this on my podcast a couple times, is that a lot of people, as they get more properties, because they want to take down a deal, they start to fudge the numbers, and don't ever do that. So if your criteria is, 8% vacancy, 10% maintenance for whatever reason, unless you know going in that this is like 100% renovated property, that this is X reason why I'm going to reduce the maintenance to 5%, you're going to bend the rule. Some other people, they just, continuously fudge the numbers to make the deal work. And that's not going to be good for you in the long run. Maybe it'll work out for the first 6 months, but after that, there are reasons why investors with years and years of experience have these general rules of thumb. Do you agree?
Oh, totally. You got to have your criteria and stick to them. I definitely have been guilty of fudging my numbers in the past and trying to make a deal work when it just shouldn't. And those are the deals that have come back to bite me and cost me a couple $1,000s. Now, in the grand scheme of things, all of these deals over the course of an entire mortgage, generally speaking, will work out for you. Mm-hmm. It's just how much pain you're willing to deal with in the short term, and how much money and how much float you're willing to put into a particular deal.
Nice. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've had sleepless nights, especially, man, in the Midwest. I think last year there were weeks of just hard pouring rain in Kansas City and Indianapolis, and like basements are flooding, and you're just like getting all these work orders from your phone. And I'm just sitting there on my couch on a Friday night. Like, I'm trying to have a good time with my friends, and I'm just looking at my property where work orders stacking up. So,
oh, dude, I think you got to up your limit and just not look at it. It's way healthier for your own sanity.
I know. So we spent a good time talking about this portfolio purchase, and I think it was a great example of creative financing and being able to build equity and benefit from the other types of incomes that real estate provides. So my last question I did have on this was your exit strategy. So you mentioned that you had a 20-year note with the seller. Is there any other exit strategies that you had in mind, maybe refinance in a couple months after you stabilized it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, on this one in particular, I'm not looking so much on the short term, a couple months. I'm definitely looking at a couple years on it. This is an area that I'm thinking is going to do extremely well. We're seeing a lot of development happening within the Irvington market. So it is something that I would hope to hold on to, honestly, for that 20 years, if not longer. But if that's not the case, I do plan on every couple years or so going to them with an offer of, for instance, let's say I still owe 1.3 million on it. Go and say, hey, you know what? I'll refinance for you and give you 1.2 today if that's something you're interested in. If they essentially get to a position where the cash flow is less important than a sum of capital. So I see if I can get a discount on that and get some immediate equity that way. In several years, once I've built up enough equity, even if they aren't open to those kinds of opportunities, I may end up refinancing and getting a longer term deal. 20 years is a little tight to make cash flow. So now granted, we expect rents to increase over time, but that there's no guarantee of that. So as I build equity, then I would potentially use that to get extended terms. So those are some of my options. If I do end up refinancing, I would probably get them unbundled. Currently, all doors are bundled together, which makes selling off an individual property extremely difficult. So that would definitely be something that I would be looking at. But at the moment, not looking to make any moves on it. But over the next couple of years, probably make that offer to give them a lump sum of cash and get a discount on the deal for myself.
I love that. Yeah, the reason why I was asking is not more so on actually selling those properties, but I wasn't sure if you had in those terms the ability to maybe carve out, 10 of those 32 doors and refinance it with a commercial lender who might give you some cash to pay off the seller and also give you better terms in terms of maybe like a 30-year amortization or whatnot.
Yeah, there's no prepayment on the deal, but I don't necessarily within the note have the ability to slice and dice the different properties. That said, this is somebody that I email on a monthly basis. I know the name of his daughter, so I definitely think that that between the two of us, we could come to an agreement should that ever come up. But it's just not necessarily in writing. Truthfully, we were moving really quickly on this deal because of the health issues that they were dealing with. So I probably should have thought a little bit more about other alternative exit strategies. But I was more concerned about getting the note than I was about necessarily the structure of the note outside of the general terms.
Right. But I really love what you just said about I might go back to them in a year or two and make them an offer and see, if anything has changed in their lives to maybe want to take a little bit of discount and get cashed out. Because, I'm going to be a little quote book here, but say, a no today does not mean a no tomorrow. And I've really experienced this during my investment journey is I've been working with the seller on a duplex near Crown Hill for 6 months now. And I'm finally closing on it next Wednesday. And man, once that's finally closed, I'm going to maybe even do a whole episode dedicated to the seller finance deal that I'm doing. But it took me 6 months.
Yeah.
And a no today does not mean a no tomorrow. So that's actually going to be the name of the episode because it was a lot of work.
I look forward to listening to it.
Yeah. But that's how you get equity. Like a lot of people are like, and you and I talked about this briefly before the show, and maybe this is a good segue into it. A lot of newer investors, they don't have the right expectations when getting into this game in terms of, hey, I've heard it on the radio show. I've seen it on Bigger Pockets. I heard my uncle Jim do it. Maybe I can do it. So equity, especially doing it right, is a lot of work in terms of doing the right due diligence, having the right team, which Nick talked about multiple times, is especially if you're out of state, if you don't have the right team, your property's not going to cash flow. So Nick, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the investor's mindset and how they should be thinking if there are newer investors getting into real estate?
Yeah. Over time, and because of the notoriety I've built, I guess, online, I'm lucky enough to have people reach out to me, and I probably talk to between 5 and 7 investors on a weekly basis, generally during my commute to and from my W-2. And the thing I'm really seeing in a lot of these investors, a lot of them have listened to a lot of the podcasts. They've maybe read a couple of the books. They're on the forums all day. But they're really missing a primary pillar of the investing, and that really comes down to something that, again, Beardy Brandon likes to say, and it's that you either need to have money in the deal, hustle knowledge, or or you need to actually have the deal itself in order to build that equity, build the foundation of the fantastic returns that you and I see on our deals. And so many of these investors I talk to either don't have very much money or have access to hard money and are counting that as their own money, which I don't necessarily count as theirs. They don't necessarily have the hustle, the network, they haven't been out to the markets, they don't know the markets, and they don't have the deals. And they're coming to me saying, all right, Nick, like I have very little money, I have very little experience, and I have no deals. Can you introduce me to your deal finders? And I'm just like I'm more than willing to help you. I'm not going to burn the bridges of my network out there because you're going to be a tire kicker. I'll help you get to the point that you're willing to start doing some deals. But any deal finder is going to bring them to me. They're going to bring them to you, Bo. They're not going to bring them to this person who hasn't proven themselves, hasn't shown that they can close. So really the piece of it that I really want people to understand is this is investing. You either need to invest your time, your money, or your deals into building equity, and there's no shortchanging that. So for me, I've invested a lot of my money, my W-2 income into this because I want to build something great. I've built a lot of time into it. I'm going to be out in Indy next or later this month. And so for me, hearing these people actually scares me a little bit for them because, honestly, it sounds a little bubbly because these people are expecting kind of free returns on their non-existent money.
Yeah. I feel like, the stories of no money downs have made real estate look very sexy, and which it is. I feel like it's the best way, in my opinion, to create financial freedom and generational wealth. No question about it. But the way that you approach it and build your portfolio is ever so important. And this is why on my podcast, I talk about, starting off with turnkey properties is not a bad thing. I mean, I started buying with 3 turnkey properties in each market. And although I didn't intentionally or strategically do that on purpose, I was going in there thinking that all I'm going to do is buy turnkey. But ever since, I started buying with FS houses, or I bought one with Little Rock turnkey, I realized that, hey, I'm going to quickly run out of money. But I want to continue doing this. And after I built the relationships, it allowed me to do the BRRRRs and the seller finance. Then you're kind of stacking your chips one at a time. It's not like all of a sudden, hey, I want to go build a wall. So, just, buy it from Amazon.com and put the wall there. It's like you literally have to lay the foundation one brick at a time. And sooner or later, you have that beautiful wall that you built, right? So I think I totally agree with you, Nick. You got to have the right expectations, but also one of those 3 things, if you don't have any of those, you're not going to be able to get into this game.
Well, or it'll be a very short-lived run.
Yeah, totally. Because, if you don't have anything and you're expecting these other people to help you, you have to kind of think of it from the other person's shoe as well, right? You're valuing, if you're not putting your own money into these deals, you're obviously, saying that, hey, I value my money. I'm going to spend it elsewhere on my, my rent, my other expenses, my food and all that. You're not going to invest in it. And then you're going to this other person asking them to invest their time. Well, so it doesn't kind of really add up. So you got to be willing to put in the work or the money or, the hustle into it so that you have a win-win partnership, in my opinion. Because I've had a lot of partnerships through real estate investing, whether it be, with a money partner or with somebody who's bringing me the deals and I give them a piece of the equity or a commission for bringing me the deal. But there's got to be a give and take, right?
Absolutely. And actually, I really like what you said there with the giving commission. I think that's something that a lot of people are not really likely to do in kind of overpaying and really making sure that the people on your team are well compensated. That's something that's incredibly important. My agent has made a ton of money on me, and he's going to be loyal to the end of the earth for me because now I'm I buy deals from him, but then also I send my deals back to him to property manage, and I've helped him build that business. So I'm essentially a long-term bond for him, in addition to those nice chunks of change. So I actually really like what you said there, and I think that's something that your listeners should take note of.
Yeah. And I'll give another example. I found this property, this seller financed property that I'm closing next Wednesday. I found him myself. And because I've done, 24 transactions so far, I know, if I wanted to buy it directly from him, I can. But what I did was I brought it to my agent who's going to be managing it on the back end and say, hey, I'll pay out of my pocket for the buyer's agent commission because I know that there's enough equity in this deal. So give him a couple $1,000s and then just help him get money in the front end and on the back end. And if you do that, I really feel like, at least if you are able to find the right people with the right mindset, they're going to take care of you, man. If you're working with greedy people that are just going to take from you, then obviously that's not going to work out. But, the people that Nick and I are working with, we have the same mindset and we're aligned in our interests. So if you take care of them, they're going to take care of you.
Yeah, if you lead with giving, you lead with service, the law of reciprocity is going to get back to you. I'm sure you and I have both kissed our fair share of frogs, but once you've found the good people out there and you've built up a quality team, it really does pay itself back 10 times.
Yep. So, we're nearing the end of our show. And before we head out, I wanted to ask you, so what's next for you, Nick? You've amassed this great portfolio in less than 3 years. You have a kicking W-2 job. You got a wife, 2 dogs. You're living the life, living the dream. So what's next on the horizon for you?
I have so much that I want to get done in the next several years. It's a little overwhelming. I look at my to-do list. It's definitely a lot, but yeah, I really hope to build up a little bit of a flipping business. I think that finding an opportunity to turn a lot of these cash flows into chunks would be particularly helpful, particularly in the Indianapolis market where I've already got my contacts and friends over there. So that's the first piece. Like I was indicating, I need to stabilize this portfolio. It still needs a little bit of work, and we're going to get there. And then, like I was indicating, I need to start branching out into additional markets, such as Kansas City, and a variety of others. Maybe some of the Florida markets as well that have similar market fundamentals as Indianapolis. Over the next several years, I definitely plan on getting to that 100-door mark and $100,000 a month of top line rental income. But I recently reread the 10x rule. So instead of that, I had to bump it up to 100, up to 1,000 doors and $1 million a month of top line rental income. So that's what I write down on my goals on a daily basis, and that's what I'm hoping to get to over the next several years.
I love that. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners, hearing you speak and be like, that is my spirit animal. That's what I want to do. Well, Nick has achieved this in, 3 years, which is pretty amazing. And I feel like if you're able to just really set a goal and put in the work, you're able to achieve it as well. So, if you listen to this episode, make sure, you listen to it one more time and kind of take down all of the notes of the key takeaways and, reach out to Nick or myself if you have any questions. But, starting a flipping business, expanding to additional markets, increasing your top line. I think those are 3 more episodes that you're going to have to come back for, Nick. Oh,
I can be talked into it. Trust me.
I love it, man. We could probably talk for hours. I'm going to have to hit you up when I go to San Jose.
Sounds good. Look forward to it.
Yeah. So please let our listeners know how they can reach out to you if they have any questions.
Yeah, you can feel free, email me at nick@giulioni.com. There are a lot of vowels in there, so I'm sure that'll be in the show notes. That, or you can find me on Bigger Pockets on Facebook. More than willing to hop on and chat with people. I love getting the opportunity to talk to new investors. My favorite moments are when I get to get videos, and I'm going to give a quick shout out to my buddy Javi, who sent me a video of him and his daughter celebrating their first their first rental property acquisition. And those are my happiest moments. So if I can help other people get that first one, or first, second, 10th, whatever it is, however I can be helpful, please do reach out. Would love to chat with you.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a funny thing with your name. That's probably a good way to weed out the tire kickers, is be like, hey, go figure out, my actual contact. I'll just give you my name, not the spelling.
Yeah, Google's not much help. So good luck, guys.
All right. Well, I'll have all that and more on the show notes for this episode. If you thought that was helpful, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you right back here next week for another exciting episode of the Bigger Cashflow podcast. Thank you for listening to the Bigger Cashflow podcast. Please remember that opinions of the guests are their own, and nothing on this show should be considered personal or professional advice. Please consult your tax, legal, or financial advisor for personal advice that fit your unique situation. See you next time.